DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
We are back and we are ready. You know, I should have got my camera set. I didn't do too much of that because the guys were on just a little bit ago. Ugh, sorry, Ben. I wasn't ready. We should start over. Quick, Cat, restart everything.
And marker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. That's right, the one and only Ben Stowe, the one you've read about in magazines. You've seen him on TV. You've seen him on the internet. And tonight, he's with us live. Good evening, Ben.
Good evening, John.
We are in a location that's a little bit different than our typical, the basement studio at the Stowe mansion. Where are we at tonight?
We are in the warehouse at NLFX.
Very nice, very nice.
Specifically the warehouse for rentals and tour support. So as you can see, my beautiful backdrop here. But it's a place where I have lots of cables, and rumor has it, that's what you want to talk about tonight.
I wanted to talk cables because every time since you did the video, the parade video, where vehicles were driving over the NLFX XLR, the XLR cable that you had across there, every time I'm at a show and I'm messing around with cables, I'm thinking to myself, I don't need to handle this cable right. You can drive a truck over this cable. And I figured, maybe we need to just go back and retouch base on the proper way to handle cables and some ideas and tips for making it so that these cables will last a long time, even though they're durable enough for people to drive over.
Well, yeah. So this seems like a really good jumping off point here. Just because our NLFX Platinum Series cables are built incredibly tough, sufficient to survive 2 miles of fire trucks and whatever else in the parade, doesn't mean you should abuse them. Anything you take care of is certainly going to last you longer. And also, just because we guarantee them forever doesn't mean you should do that, because if you do have a failure, you're going to be sad. So if you take care of them and we guarantee them forever, you're going to be in really, really good shape.
You'll be sad.
You'll be sad.
You will be sad when all of a sudden it's like, why is this not working? Come on, it was only a tank that drove over it.
Well, we're working on that actually. So we're coordinating with our local mechanized infantry division. So stay tuned.
Okay, we're gonna go.
I don't know if we're gonna get like a full-on M1A1, Abrams main battle tank, but I think we're gonna get like a Bradley fighting vehicle or something. I mean, bottom line, it's metal, it has a gun, and it has tracks, and you should never drive that over a cable. We're gonna do it anyway.
Well, we actually went up and saw the M1A1 and a lot of different military vehicles. There was an open house at a local camp just up the road here from us, and we were there. And I've talked about the video where the parade rolled over the cable, and one of the kids were asking, "So did one of these drive over Ben's cable?" See, even my children know the test.
Yeah, unfortunately, no tanks in the parade this year, but our local military folks seem like pretty good sports. They seem perfectly willing to try to destroy that cable. So I said, well, get her done. Let's go.
Such a fun. So Ben, let's start off a little bit with, there's obviously ways of winding cable, and we'll get to that, but ways to contain the cable. Now I see that you've got next to you a very nice looking cable, tote case, what have you.
Trunk. First, how about a great way to contain people? I just got this in the mail today.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm really digging it. And your timing could not have been more perfect, because fall has fallen on us like a ton of bricks. It was 50 degrees today and it's miserably cold. And but it's actually kind of nice and warm in our warehouse. So I'm gonna lose the jacket, but I just had to wear it for you, and let all of our viewers see what kind of incredible swag DJNTV insiders are getting. So
yeah, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, that.
Here comes the big striptease. You ready?
We're northern Minnesota people. Our striptease with us, not too exciting.
Yeah, don't make it weird, John. Don't make it weird. Just
I don't know if we can make it more weird than you already started to make it. Oh.
All right,
Okay.
game on. So yes, we have a trunk with cables here, and as you can see, they're sorted here. Some of the shorter lengths, and then 30 foot is kind of my utility length. That's what the vast majority of them are, and then there's some 50s and 100s over here. So your mileage may vary. I mean, as far as what you would carry cables in, it really depends on you. Depends on how many cables you're carrying, what you have for space, whether or not you want to carry something, a bag, or you want to carry a tote or a small utility trunk, or a medium-sized utility trunk. And there are certainly bigger trunks than this,
So now I see in that trunk, of course, you've got them kind of divided by size, as you were mentioning, but they look like they're gathered together and they're being held together well. I'm not seeing them kind of rat tail and intermingle all that much. So just containing the cables, what are you using for that?
Well, each cable, and by the way, the very first thing we teach new stagehands when we hire them, the very first thing is how to coil a cable. If you can't coil a cable, there really isn't anything else we have for you to do. That is just absolutely job number one.
So why is that important?
Well, one, proper care and feeding of your cables is going to cause them to have a very good long life, and that means you're going to have less issues in the field, less troubleshooting. When you get a lot of cables deployed, even a couple of cables deployed, they don't really present themselves with a big red flashing light like, "Hey, I'm the problem." It can take some time to sort that out, and time is money. And time is also a very precious commodity when you're talking about shows, setup time and that sort of thing. And so the same principle applies with just why they're neatly coiled and why they're tied. It's all about time. That I can very quickly just keep pulling cable after cable after cable out of this trunk. I don't have to sort through a spaghetti mess. I can get the cable out I need. I know what length it is. Of course, handy feature of the NLFX cables, we put the length on the end, which helps. Once we go to deploy this cable, it's going to uncoil nicely. It's going to lay nice and straight. It's just all about time and efficiency, I think.
Yeah, and that whole concept, I've heard people talk about the wrapping and such of cables properly. And I struggle with that. Even myself, I can do it once in a while, and then there's times where it's like, okay, why can't I do it? I just did it, but I can't do it. So I'm hoping that there's like a little kid's poem or a little nursery rhyme that you can give us to, that the wheel gun bus go round and round back, and so I can remember. No, not so much.
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall doing over under. He did it wrong, and the stage manager pushed him off the wall. The end. That's pretty macabre.
That's pretty dark.
Jack and Jill went up a hill. Jack was doing it wrong. Jill pushed him down the hill.
The end. These are pretty dark stories you're telling us. Is this telling us something about Ben Stowe's?
Anybody who's worked on a stage knows I'm just telling the truth. Let's see. Roses are red, violets are blue. One time you go over, and the next time you go under.
And never go through.
And never go through. Yes, that's an important one. Yeah, otherwise you end up with a knot. I can show you that, John. And in fact, I've got some bigger cables, so we can show people maybe the difference of how you might do it with a mic cable as opposed to a power cable or a feeder or a Soka or something like that. So
very nice, very nice. I'm watching the chat.
I sort of came prepared for whatever you might throw at me.
Yeah, no, I'm just we're watching the chat. So if you are in Facebook or YouTube, thank you for joining us. And if you have a question about handling cables, dealing with cables, this is a great night to ask because Ben has the things right in front of him. Is there any difference?
It's interesting. We mentioned that the very first thing we teach our stagehands is how to coil a cable. And one of our young stagehands was mentioning to me just I think within the last couple of weeks, he was sort of giggling as we were leaving the hotel and he was coiling up a phone cord and he says, "I even do my phone cord this way now." And I think that's sort of the key is repetition obviously is important. And once you kind of get it into your, into a rhythm, you'll do it with everything, Don't do it with ropes, but any cable, it's a great way to do it. It's really, in my opinion, it's the only way to do it.
Sure. Do you coil cables different? I mean, obviously you're saying many of them, but is there any different nuances if you're doing a DMX cable that has a little bit different capabilities than an audio XLR, or even to a power cord? I mean, they each have a little bit different characteristics of the copper inside them.
Yeah, that's an important thing to remember when we talk about why we use the over-under method. And I'll show you, and I'll just kind of demonstrate it here in a second. But when we think about the copper that's inside, the conductors that are inside, this is a power cord, which relatively speaking has bigger conductors inside, and even those can quickly become permanently twisted and distressed, and then that cable ends up as complete junk. In fact, I've got some examples I left down here because, well, they live in the catacombs there. I had to go find these because ours don't look like this. But here's a mic cable. We might be able to fix it. We might be able to return it to form. Obviously, it's learned some bad habits, but those internal conductors have definitely endured stress. So I'm not going to try. Here's a power cord, and you can see what's going on here. Can you see that really well?
Oh, yeah, look at the twist in that.
Yeah, and really, I don't know that you're ever going to get this back. I mean, it's just a mess. I mean, this poor cable has had a terrible life, and nobody loved it, and I don't love it either. So, we should take care of our cables and love them and have them for a long time. What we would want to do, and we'll just take this guy right off the top here. Number one is when I go to use this cable, this is going to play out really nice. So just play right off. I mean, I could actually take and throw this cable and it would just lay out nice and straight. I'm not recommending throwing cables either, by the way. But certainly I could have my spool and I could leave it on the ground and just kind of walk away and it would just unfurl really nice. And we can see that cable is nice and straight.
Yeah.
No twist. It's gonna go where we put it. It's gonna stay on the stage. Some of the cables in this trunk are quite old. I wouldn't even venture to guess how old. Excuse me. So here's just a couple things. We'll just kind of jump in until we get some questions. One, more often than not, the female end is going into a microphone. So we've put the tie on the male end so that we don't have that dangling off the microphone. I mean, it works for Steven Tyler and his handkerchiefs or whatever, but I don't want it happening on every microphone I put on there. Number two, and we use cotton tie line, and I'll go through some other examples of things you can use, but make sure it's long enough to be useful. Tie line's inexpensive. Don't be skimpy, or you're going to be fighting with that forever. I'm going to sort of over-exaggerate this a little bit in the hopes to kind of show people what's going on. I like to start, I'm right-handed, and I can do this left-handed, and I can do it upside down, hanging from a beam. I can do it any number of ways, but I'm going to try to do this.
Challenge accepted. Can't get the beam out.
A future show.
Oh, future show. Okay, good. We have 2 weeks.
I'll get my inner Spider-Man out. So I like to start with a little bit of cable just kind of hanging over my hand here.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to take about an arm's length of cable. And in order to sort of demonstrate this, got a guest riding me out on the shirt there. Bugs. Anyway, I'm going to take about an arm's length of cable, and I'm going to just do this with my finger and my thumb just to sort of show what's happening. My first wrap is going to be an over, and I'm going to put a slight clockwise twist in the cable. And you can see it just kind of almost wants to lay right there for me, just how it wants to do that. And then again, I'm going to do this in an over-exaggerated way. My next one, I'm coming out same distance, finger and thumb again, but I'm going to put a counterclockwise twist, and I'm coming under. Okay, see how I've got my under there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now there's my over under. Now when we get down to the practice of doing it, you don't have to do. I'm not going to use my finger and thumb anymore because I can just kind of do this.
Sure.
You get very fast at it at some point, but just a little practice obviously goes a long ways there. So that's all there is to it. You just quite literally rinse and repeat over under. That's it. And you're done. And that cable is going to stay very nice and straight. We get done with our wrap, nice uniform coil. Listen, here's the deal. If it's your rig, you can do it any way you want. If you're working for somebody, you do it the way they tell you to do it. Okay. So don't take my word as the gospel. That's how it works. If it's their cable and they're paying you, then you do it their way. If it's your cable and you can do it your way. Me, I like to use a shoelace knot. Why? Because everybody knows how to tie it and it comes off really easy. That's my preference. But like I said, don't go to your boss if you're working for somebody else and say, well, Ben Stowe said, hey, if they're writing the check, that's how it works.
You do it their way. So when a person buys a brand new cable and it's coiled up, is there something I need to do to get it straightened out? Because I mean, obviously the cable that you were just using was very good and straight and there weren't any twists. But when I've taken a brand new, say, 50-foot cable that has been in a coil, it has some twists in it. How do you get those out, or how do you handle that to make it sure that you're starting that wire properly?
Well, I sort of just kind of love it for a little bit, you know. I mean, let that copper work itself out in kind of a natural lay. Usually those are machine coiled and they're just continuously coiled, like they're wrapped on a spool, that sort of thing. Our cables, when they're made, they actually go through a cable stretcher, which sort of takes some of that out. But then, of course, they get coiled back and packaged. And so they do have that temporary, coil to them, I guess. It comes out really fast, though. We don't really do anything special when we take new cables out of the package. They kind of work themselves out, just on their own. One thing to remember is if your cable has developed a little bit of a memory or sort of a bad habit, and you have to do maybe 2 overs in a row or 2 unders in a row just to make the cable happy, the world won't end. That's fine. Don't fight the cable. But as far as doing, anything special, one thing that you can do, particularly if the jacket is presenting a problem for you, is take it out on a nice sunny day, which we are fresh out of here in Minnesota. But you can take it out on a nice sunny day and lay it out in the ground and let it warm up a little bit. Or very carefully, you could put it in your oven on a very low setting, like 150 degrees or warmer or something like that, and never take your eyes off that cable. All right. You could just get it a little bit soft. All right. If you set your oven on fire with a cable, it's not my fault. I'm telling you, be very careful. It should take substantial temperature to cause one of these combust, but we're playing with fire literally here. So, but you can do that if you live in Minnesota and you only have 2 weeks of sunshine. You can, just warm it up and get it a little bit more pliable, and then you can attempt to coil it.
Jimmy mentioned that his cables are on reels, and I have seen cord reels that they have advertised for audio cables. Now, wouldn't that put an unusual twist on it?
Not if you do it right. The thing you have to be careful with reels is that the beginning of the reel tends to be small, and so you're getting in that bend radius, maybe a little tight. But there are, like he said, there are good reels out there, and just be careful that when you're cranking it, you're not winding it too tight, putting too much stress on those internal conductors. Sort of visualize what's happening inside that cable.
Especially as you get into heavier gauge wires, which you have some power cables behind you that have larger strands of copper in there do you handle those differently?
I do. So here's a good example. This is just basically a bare end tail for a tie-in for a feeder, what we use for power in basically a 5-wire 3-phase system. And this is a 2-aught, and our other feeders are 4-aught, which is bigger. 4-aught's bigger than 2-aught, as we talked about in the previous show. So if you can, sort of visualize how big that is, as opposed to, in a 4-aught being bigger, as opposed to some of these smaller cables. One, they're actually a little easier to coil because, it's just pretty much all copper. But 2, they're very heavy. And because I'm kind of a wimp, I didn't grab a 100-footer and I didn't grab a 4-aught. I grabbed a 25-foot 2-aught. Okay, because the whole point here is just about making a demonstration, right?
Yeah.
Not trying to show off. So here we have a 25-foot 2-aught, and it's already pretty heavy. So you're talking about 100 pounds for a 100-foot 4-aught cable.
That's what I was just going to ask. What pound? What's the weight per foot?
Yeah, this is probably only about 16 or 17 pounds, maybe.
Okay.
I would guess. I am guessing, but it's probably somewhere in there.
And where's that cable used?
I guess I could, if I wanted to, I could hold that in my hand and coil it. I could do that.
Ben, where would that cable be? Oh.
And you can see here where I'm just sort of working with the cable to see how it wants to lay, to make it happy, kind of finding where its twists it wants to be. But I could probably coil this 25-footer in my hands. I mean, obviously I know I can. But the thing about feeders is there's rarely just one. Certainly there's going to be 5, and there's probably going to be more. Pretty soon you're going to wear yourself out. Mm-hmm. So we've got a much better way to deal with things like this. And we'll go ahead and have our camera pan down, and I'm going to make the cable a mess down here so we can show you how we can make it not a mess. So, all right, camera ready?
Yep, looking good.
Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do it on the ground. That's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to just lay it down. My first one's an over, and my second one is an under. And then an over, and an under. And then we tie, and we're done.
So where is that heavy wire used? What application?
This is what delivers power to the system. So there's 5 of these wires. Here we see blue, which represents one of the phases, red, which represents one of the phases, and then you have a black, white, and green, just like you would in your electrical wiring at home. Black, of course, being hot, or in this case, the X phase. We have X, Y, Z phases. And then white being the neutral or the grounded conductor, and then green being ground. And so that is what allows us to deliver the kind of power that the systems we're using requires. That we'll use, these large cables capable of 200 or 400 amps of current carrying capacity.
Very nice.
And there's some other ways that we other big cables that we have. This one here, let's see, this guy. This is another 3-phase cable, and it's just smaller. Has 10 gauge conductors inside, but here we have our 5 conductors again. So we're carrying 3 phases of power over this cable. And again, this little guy here, I could coil this, in my hands, but if you start getting a 100-footer or a 50-footer, it's going to be hard to hold in your hand. You might even be too big for your hand, but also it can wear you out very quickly.
Yeah.
So, so that you can keep moving quickly and not get in trouble with the boss, you can just do these on the ground. You can do it very quickly. And, again, we tie it off and we're done. So glad I learned to tie my shoes.
Yeah, wow, you're really putting that skill to the test today.
And then another example I grabbed, and this one here, I would struggle. I could probably, again, if I wanted to show off, I could probably coil this by hand, but there's no room for pride or heroes on a show. It's just room for efficiency and speed. So here we've got a 50-foot of what we call a Socapex cable. This carries 6 20-amp circuits up to a lighting rig, and they're used for a few other things, whatever. But this one's only a 50-footer. I grabbed kind of babies here, so you can imagine this is a 50-footer. You can imagine what a 100-footer, would weigh. And again, you're going to wear out. You're going to run out of steam really fast if you're trying to coil those by hand. So coiling even a 100-foot 12-gauge extension cord, which probably every DJ has, being able to do that on the ground might be a really useful thing, particularly if you have small hands. I'm lucky I get, pretty big hands, but still, I'm not getting younger, right? So.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned, of course, the shoe. You've got the shoelace, the laces on there. I've seen some that are using a Velcro tie, and I've seen plastic clips. When I was at the hardware show, that seemed to be like the big cord fetish, we'll call it, for lack of a better way to describe it, among some of the booths there. They had these plastic clips where you could put, clip it around your cables and then hang them up on the wall in your garage. First off, is hanging wires on a nail or hanging it from a clip like that, is that a good way to handle it? I mean, is that tough on the wire?
I think it depends on the wire. Very unlikely with a large cable like that you're certainly putting stress on that one little point, but it's probably not likely to really manifest itself in terms of damage. One, you're probably not hanging it on the same spot every time. Two, again, we're putting stressors on that one point, but only the weight of the cable, and we're not causing that cable to bend. What would be really bad for a cable now I wish I hadn't thrown that other cable away, is if you bend it really tightly. We want to preserve nice, soft bend radiuses. Excuse me, I still got this cough, viewers, and I've had a lot of great suggestions, by the way. I just can't seem to shake the cough. So thanks for those suggestions. But, I don't know. I guess I would like to use a larger diameter hook, and I've got the coated hooks in my garage to hang my extension cords and things. But in a environment like ours, maybe use even larger, wider, like J hooks, that sort of thing. Or better, just put them in a trunk. I don't know that I see a lot of practicality to hanging a cable on a nail in the DJ or touring environment.
Yeah, I've seen some who are organizing their DJ shop, and they have their pegboard, and they've got their cables there and extension cords over here, and I'm thinking, I'm just you're way too organized for me.
Well, and that's fine for in your shop. And, again, that cable's just hanging on the wall. It's not really moving. It's a very low stress environment. On the road, obviously, when they're all laying like this, they're just kind of nestled neatly together, and there's a lot of surface area, touching a lot of surface area. As far as the plastic hook things, the plastic clippy things, it's a personal preference. To me, I wouldn't be into that. I think they're kind of a gimmicky thing. I think they probably get broke on the road. And they're going to take up extra space in my trunk that I just don't need. The cotton tie line stays on the cable. It's there when we're done. It's all about speed and efficiency. But of course, you mentioned some of the other things, Velcro, example, like, here's a Velcro tie. I just kind of went and raided the shop. Here's some different examples of some different colors of Velcro ties. And what's nice about this particular Velcro tie is it has a little slot that allows me to put it on the cable and leave it on the cable. So that's kind of a nifty thing. If you're not really good with tying knots, or you're just not into that, or you want to have Velcro, or you want to do some color coding. Oops. Well, I'll be practicing my coiling later on that one. This will stay on the cable then, and when I'm done coiling, I can put it on. By the way, you know what they say about tying knots? If you can't tie a knot, tie a lot. So. Listen, viewers, you don't pay me for the jokes, okay? So,
but we do pay for the poetry that we had earlier. So,
yes, I'll work on that. My mom is an English teacher too. That's really shameful, I know, but
she's cringing somewhere. Why am I having this headache that starts at the back of my head? What is Ben doing?
She's done cringing. I think she started cringing 24 years ago when I went into rock and roll in the music business. I don't know that there's anything that I could do now that would make her cringe more, so, although, you know what, I tell you, I don't want to name any names, but my mom likes music just like everybody loves music. And when I was working for one of her bands, big favorite of hers, and she got to meet them and hang out with them and do that whole starstruck thing. I think those 24 years of the music business suddenly didn't seem so bad. I think it seemed like a pretty good vocation. And she realized that, touring by and large is very professional. It's, we're not out doing the things I think that society maybe thinks we do, particularly the road crew. We just don't have time.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of work.
Plus, you can't do that every day or your heart will just explode. And, and we've seen those tragedies in the industry. So, we all try to take pretty good care of ourselves. And again, you can't apply that to everybody, but the people I'm touring with are taking pretty good care of themselves. And, we're just trying to feed our families. We're just focusing on doing the job. So,
Ethernet.
One last thing I came upon, I've seen these at trade shows, and obviously we managed to grab one. And I felt like mentioning it because I see them all over the place. It's sort of like a double-ended golf tee with a rubber band on it, but it's called a bongo tie. And those seem to be fairly popular with some people, as an option too. Again, it wouldn't be my cup of tea just because, I see it as something that could get broke. Tie line's inexpensive, easy to cut to length for different size cables. But I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to give you some options.
There you go. Give some ideas. As we'll wrap up here in just a couple. Ethernet cables. A lot of DJs are using Ethernet for different applications. Now, is there a different methodology to handling that type of wire? Because it is just a bunch of tiny wires with very, very thin coating on it.
Yeah, I was told once, many, many years ago, when we were getting one of our certifications for, install wiring and that sort of thing, that if you step on an Ethernet cable, you could break it. I don't know that I've ever actually seen that happen, but I think it underscores the point of how fragile an Ethernet cable can be. If you're using Ethernet cable in the portable application, out on gigs and that sort of thing, you should use a really heavy duty rubberized jacket, stranded conductor, not the PVC jacket, solid conductor you would buy to install something in your wall. That's just not designed to be coiled and uncoiled and coiled and uncoiled. And shameless plug, we have a really great Cat 5 and Cat 6 shielded rubber jacket in the NLFX line, frankly, because I needed one. So, obviously our mixing consoles and all of our lighting goes by Cat 5 now. We're carrying multiple universes over ArtNet. We're just running Cat 5 to the stage, and it's broken out into nodes there. So anyway, yeah, you should use a really high quality cable. And two, just love the cable. Be careful with it. Try to keep it out of traffic areas. Put cable protectors over it if you can, guard dogs, or even a small one, depending on what fits your application. And when you're coiling it, don't go berserk with it. The over the arm thing, that puts so much stress on that cable. Those pinch points. It's just the wrong way to do it by any definition. That might be the one time where I would disagree, where I would say if whatever the person who's paying you says, that's what you do it. If they tell you to do it this way, no. I think that's one of those times you just got to say, let me help you. Let me show you a better way. Let me show you how to preserve your cables and make sure that every single one of them comes out of the trunk nice and neat, ready to go, cable after cable. We could do this all day,
Nice.
I mean, speed and efficiency, plus you're not dealing with problems and you're not having to replace cables and things. So.
We've talked about this in prior shows, but you just mentioned both Cat 5 and Cat 6 cabling. What's just in a quick little nutshell, what's the difference between the two?
Basically, Cat 6 is engineered. They both use 8 conductors inside in twisted pairs, but Cat 6 is engineered to handle data at a higher rate, more data at a faster speed. So it's structured and engineered in such a way that allows it to carry more data.
Are the wires inside, because of it being structured differently or engineered differently, are they more fragile, same, more durable?
There's probably a correct answer to that question on some physical level. I would say same. I would say you should never get that close. We never want to push the margin for error. Obviously, what we did with the parade was intentional. And, we were certainly willing to have that cable die. There was no consequence of having it die except maybe our embarrassment. And of course, much to our delight, it didn't die. It's still rolling. It may survive a tank. We don't know. But why risk that at your show? So I don't think I'd get into splitting those literal hairs of whether a Cat 6 or 5 is more fragile. I would just treat them both as incredibly important because they're carrying potentially all of your audio or all of your lighting, but also very fragile. And have backups. Please have backups, no matter what, even if it's our cable. Yes, I have a tremendous amount of faith in these, and we would never guarantee them forever. Forever is a really long time, in case you were counting. But please have backups.
Yeah, a little bit of an extra cable or two is cheap insurance when you have a show on the line. That's for sure.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, you depending on what you do, maybe you need more than this, maybe you don't need this much, but the margin for error shouldn't ever be thin. The weakest link in a chain, they can be misplaced, they can be damaged by somebody doing something incredibly dumb. Not even you, but somebody else in the room could do something that could cause damage to your cable during their setup process. It's just a really good idea to have spares. This is something kind of neat. I just wanted to throw it in there before I forgot. But this little identifier here, it not only holds the cord for tying, not only holds the cotton tie line for tying, has a barcode on it for scanning, and inside it has an RFID chip. So if you really want to know if every one of your cables is in the trunk, you could have this guy and just use an RFID scanner and you'd know. So.
Last question here that I just had come across, and then we'll be wrapping up here in a minute. Cleaning the cables. I've had numerous events over the years where I have a cable that was near the dance floor, or like 2 weeks ago, I was coiling them. I sat them on the edge of the stage and somebody came and dumped a drink on them. What's the best way to clean it?
Well, the cleaning is going to depend on what went on it to some degree. Obviously, you want to avoid harsh solvents and that sort of thing. We don't want to erode the jacket. But generally, just, drinks are usually water soluble. So maybe, warm soapy water will solve that. If you used duct tape on your cables, and you have to get the goo off, or somebody else did, Goo Gone works pretty good, that sort of thing. And again, read the directions on these bottles and take proper, protective measures for yourself when you're using them. But usually just soap and water, or even just water often is all we'll use. We have a lot of cables that end up going through some horrific things as we do arena shows. And I don't know, I guess, back at the mixing board, I don't really watch the audience so much. I mean, I pay attention to my job, but I think at the end of the show, like, everybody takes their beer and just dumps it on the floor. I don't know. It seems like, and so it just seems like, as you land a lighting truss and some of those cable looms come down and that sort of thing, it's laying in puddles of golly knows what, and generally, water or soapy water takes care of that for us. So.
Very nice. Good stuff. Good stuff. For those of you joining us tonight, thank you for being with us. If you are looking for any types of cables, Ben's talked a little bit about the NLFX Pro line of cables. They have got the DMX, the audio cables, the speaker cables, really the whole line. And Kat, who's behind the camera tonight, would love to get you hooked up with those, or Katie, or anyone else up at NLFX Pro. So go check them out at nlfxpro.com.
Yep. Whole bunch of coworkers here that would love to talk to you. They'd love to help you, And again, they're guaranteed forever. That's really hard to beat.
I got to say, I've had some for a long time, and we haven't gotten to forever yet. I've had many of them cables fail, but never an NLFX Pro. But I've never had a tank run over them either, so that's now a challenge.
Well, it's something to look forward to. I think the best proving ground for our cable, and when somebody asked me, I'm actually speaking at a university tomorrow, and the professor that asked me to come in was talking about some of the things that we do. And he said, what made you want to make your own cable? And I said, I wanted a cable I could feel good about using. I wanted a cable I would use.
Yeah.
And obviously, we our proving ground is outside the laboratory. And of course we have all that stuff, but the real proving ground is taking it out in the field. And I'm really proud of how they've held up so far. So we hope you'll like them as much as we like our own.
Great stuff. Thank you for the tips and ideas, Ben. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back in about 20 minutes or so with Brian Redd and myself. We'll be coming on. You can find a link over DJNTV.com, or you can go out to the Facebook page. But we'll be back in about 20 minutes. We'll see you a little later.